I was born from fire. Not the gentle fire you humans once tamed in your hearths and cities, but the raging, cosmic fire that tears stars apart and scatters their bones across the universe. I am the child of an ancient explosion, my body forged from the ashes of suns that lived and died long before me. In the beginning, I was nothing more than dust and gas, swirling in silence, waiting to become something greater. Gravity, the unseen hand of the cosmos, pulled me together, piece by piece, until I became whole. My body glowed with heat, my skin cracked and molten. I was chaos made solid, a storm of stone and flame. I remember my earliest breaths. They were heavy, poisonous clouds of carbon dioxide, methane, and steam. My sky was dark and choking, lit only by the glow of endless volcanoes spilling fire into oceans that did not yet exist. Lightning forked through my atmosphere, striking barren rock, boiling vapor. I did not know then that I was destined to be more than stone. I only knew the violence of creation. Time, to me, an ocean that stretches forever, washed over my surface. My molten seas cooled. My skin hardened into crust. Rains fell, endless rains for thousands upon thousands of years, carving rivers into my face and filling vast basins until my oceans were born. For the first time, I knew water, and I carried it like blood in my veins. I was alive, though I did not yet understand what that meant. The stars watched me in silence. Around me, my brothers and sisters spun, Mars, cold and dry, Venus, cloaked in suffocating heat. I wondered if they envied me, for I was wrapped in oceans and storms, full of potential. I was not merely a stone adrift, I was a cradle. But a cradle for what, I did not yet know. Deep within my seas, chemicals swirled and clashed. Lightning struck again and again, igniting sparks in the darkness. Something small, invisible, and fragile stirred in my waters. A seed, a whisper of life. And though I had no voice, no language, I felt it, a shift, a heartbeat, a promise. I had given birth to more than just mountains and oceans. I had given birth to possibility. I did not know what would come of it. I did not yet dream of creatures or civilizations. I only knew that something had awakened inside me, something that would shape my story forever. I was Earth. I was young, and life, faint and fragile, had begun to breathe upon my skin. I remember the first time my waters stirred with more than storms. For ages, my oceans were silent but restless, rolling under skies of thunder and lightning. Rain hammered my skin, rivers cut valleys into my surface, and volcanoes still roared like ancient beasts, feeding me with fire. Yet beneath the waves, something small and hidden was awakening. It began with the simplest sparks of existence. Tiny shapes, invisible to the eye, drifted in my seas. They were fragile, weaker than the waves that carried them. Yet they clung to life with a persistence that surprised even me. These were not rocks or rivers. They were different. They consumed, they divided, they multiplied. I watched them spread, filling my waters with invisible whispers of motion. At first, they were so small, so unremarkable, but to me they were extraordinary. They were my first children. They did not know me, nor could they thank me, but I felt their presence as surely as I felt the heat of my core. They breathed in ways no stone ever could. They fed on sunlight and minerals, weaving energy into themselves. Some released oxygen, filling my seas with bubbles that slowly drifted upward unseen. At first, this change was subtle. My skies remained heavy, my air still toxic. But slowly, ever so slowly, the breath of my children began to shift me. Oxygen seeped into my waters, then into my atmosphere, building patiently over eons. I, who had once choked on my own fumes, began to taste the sweetness of new air. I had taken my first breath. My days grew brighter. Sunlight reached deeper into my seas, painting them with colors never before seen. Life multiplied, shaping itself into new forms, filaments, colonies, mats that spread across rocks and shorelines. They covered me like a living skin. Still, these beings were humble, almost silent. They had no voices, no songs, no thoughts. They simply lived, but in their living, they transformed me. Time, for me, moves in tides of millions of years. I watched as one age slipped into the next. From these tiny beginnings came more complex forms, organisms with new shapes, new ways of moving. Fins flickered in the shallows. Soft bodies drifted in the currents. The quiet of my oceans began to fill with motion, with struggle, with hunger. Predators appeared, chasing prey. Prey learned to hide, to adapt. Life was no longer a simple existence. It had become a dance, a contest, a story. I marveled at them. Each one was small compared to me, yet together they reshaped my very nature. I had been born in fire, but now I pulsed with life. My mountains and seas were no longer empty, they had purpose. And though no one watched, no one listened, I felt proud. I wondered if my siblings, barren Mars, scorched Venus, felt sorrow, knowing they could not share in this wonder. I carried life not only on my skin but within my very essence. I was more than a world. I was a home. And my children had only just begun to breathe. My oceans no longer whispered with only the small, they thundered with life. From the tiniest sparks, new beings grew, adapting, changing, daring to take shapes never seen before. Soft bodies became armored shells. Fins became legs. Creatures that once drifted in silence now surged with power, their jaws snapping, their eyes glimmering with hunger. The seas were no longer mine alone. They belonged to them. And then came the boldest of my children, those who crawled from the oceans to my rocky shores. Their bodies, once built for water, strained against the air. They stumbled, they struggled, yet some endured. With lungs and limbs, they claimed the land, filling it with footsteps and breath. I had never felt so alive. Forests rose, painting me in green. Vast ferns and towering trees stretched toward the sky, their roots drinking deep from my rivers. They exhaled the oxygen my seas had long been making, filling my skies with a richness that gave power to creatures larger than any before. And so the giants were born. Beings of scale and teeth, of thunderous steps and terrible cries, ruled my forests and plains. Some towered like mountains, their long necks grazing treetops. Others were fierce hunters, swift and cunning, their roars echoing through valleys. Dinosaurs, you would call them. To me, they were children of a bolder age. They spread across me, from deserts to jungles, from icy peaks to swamps steaming with life. My seas too held giants, reptiles with wings of skin who dived into waters to feast. Sharks the size of ships gliding in silence, creatures with armored hides that shimmered under sunlight. For millions of years they thrived. I watched them grow, struggle, evolve. I felt their weight upon my lands, their warmth in my winds, their migrations like waves across my body. They gave me stories in every breath, battles in the forests, hunts in the plains, migrations across endless deserts. But like all things, their reign was not forever. I do not control the sky, yet the sky holds power over me. One day, a visitor came, a wandering stone, vast and merciless, drawn by chance and gravity. It tore through my skies with fire, striking me with a force that shook mountains and boiled seas. In that moment, my giants fell silent, forests burned, skies darkened. Ash reigned for years. The earth itself trembled with grief as life that once thundered with power dwindled to whispers again. But I did not mourn as you would mourn, for I have always known endings are also beginnings. The giants were gone, but not all. Smaller, quicker beings endured. Feathered creatures that took to the skies, mammals that hid in shadows, surviving where giants could not. I knew then what I always know. Life is not still. It changes, adapts, becomes. And I waited, patient as stone, for the next age of my children to rise. The silence left by the giants did not last. Where thunderous steps once shook my forests, softer feet now pressed against my soil. Where roars once split the air, smaller voices emerged, chirps, growls, rustles in the underbrush. My mammals, once hidden in shadows, emerged into the light. They had lived quietly for so long, scurrying beneath leaves, burrowing into the ground, darting through the night while giants hunted above. Now, with the giants gone, they expanded. They filled the gaps left behind. I watched them adapt with astonishing speed. Some grew small and nimble, darting through trees. Others became strong and heavy, grazing in herds across my plains. Some returned to the waters, reshaping themselves into sleek bodies that could dive into the depths, echoing the old giants of the seas. Their fur warmed them in my colder regions. Their clever paws grasped, tore, and built. Their milk nourished their young with tenderness I had never seen before in my children. They were different from the giants. Not just in size, but in spirit. The dinosaurs had ruled by dominance, but mammals thrived by resilience. They adapted to deserts, to tundras, to mountains. They endured hunger, storms, and shifting climates. And as ages passed, they grew bolder. Great beasts rose, towering mammoths with tusks curved like moons, armored rhinos and saber-toothed hunters whose fangs glistened in my sunlight. My lands shook once more with the steps of giants, though these were smaller, softer, and more fleeting than those before. Still, they were magnificent. Forests filled with chattering primates who swung between branches, their curious eyes glimmering with intelligence I had not yet seen. Herds of antelope and bison raced across my plains, followed by predators who stalked with patience and precision. My skies darkened with the wings of countless birds, descendants of the ones who had survived the fall of the dinosaurs. It was an age of balance, predator and prey, growth and loss. My cycles turned, and the mammals followed their rhythm. But unlike the dinosaurs, these children had something else. A spark. Not a fire, not yet, but a possibility. In their eyes, I glimpsed something unfamiliar: awareness, curiosity, the beginnings of thought. They did not just live, they learned, they remembered. They changed their ways not only through evolution but through choice. I wondered then if they might someday shape me as no other children had. But I did not hurry them. I have always had time. I am patient, even when my children are not. The mammals filled my forests, plains, and seas, reshaping me in their quiet, steady rise. Yet none among them sought dominion over me. None yet tried to master my rivers, tame my winds, or command my mountains. And in this world, in this story where humanity never came, they never would. My children would remain wild, free, unbound. I felt no sorrow in this, only wonder. For even without humans, I was alive with voices, movement, and breath. My story was still rich, still endless. And the mammals in their dawn were only the beginning. Without you, my world remained untamed. No roads carved into my forests, no cities pressing against my rivers, no towers piercing my skies. Instead, my lands belonged to life alone. Forests spread without end, their roots tangled in eternal embrace. Ancient trees rose like cathedrals, their canopies so vast they turned my ground into twilight. Vines coiled and flowers bloomed in colors no eye would name. My winds carried the scent of earth and rain, untainted, wild. Across my plains, herds thundered without restraint. Wild beasts, bison, antelope, horses, countless creatures roaming as one, their migrations like flowing rivers of flesh and sound. Predators followed them: wolves, lions, packs of hunters moving with instinct sharper than blades. And in the seas, my abundance was limitless. Whales sang their haunting songs across entire oceans. Shoals of fish shimmered like silver storms beneath the waves. Coral reefs glowed with colors brighter than the skies above. Even the deep trenches, places untouched by sunlight, pulsed with strange lights, creatures glowing like stars within my body. It was balance, it was chaos, it was life unbroken. No species reigned supreme. No hand sought to bend me to its will. My rhythms were dictated only by the turning of my axis, the breath of my seasons, the fire of my sun. There were no borders, no ownership, no conquest, only survival. Yet survival was enough. My children lived, died, and lived again. In the endless cycle of birth and decay, nothing was wasted. The fallen fed the soil fed the roots fed the living. Predators did not kill with malice. Prey did not flee with hatred. There was no greed, no ambition. Only the pulse of existence, steady as my tides. At times, storms tore across my lands, reminding my children of my power. Volcanoes roared, reshaping the earth in fire. Earthquakes cracked mountains, floods swallowed valleys. And yet, life always returned. It always adapted. I was not a paradise. I was not cruel. I was simply alive. Without humans, I never knew monuments of stone or steel. I never heard voices rise in language or song. I never felt the weight of machines tearing into my soil. But in their absence, I also never knew war, never knew pollution, never knew scars carved deeper than time could heal. My forests were never burned for fields. My rivers were never poisoned with waste. My skies were never darkened with smoke. Instead, they remained pure, vast, eternal. The wilds ruled me, and I embraced them. And so without humanity, I was not empty. I was full, more alive than ever. Yet still, I wondered, for in all my owns, I had seen life rise and fall. I had seen creatures grow mighty only to vanish. I had seen sparks of intelligence before, flickering in eyes of dolphins, elephants, ravens, apes. But without humans, that spark never grew into fire. I was beautiful, I was whole. But I remained silent. The endless wilds thrived, but no voice rose to tell my story. My wilds roared with life. Every corner of me pulsed with sound, the whisper of leaves, the crash of waves, the cries of predators, the songs of birds. Yet beneath it all, there was another sound, harder to name, a silence. It was not the silence of absence, for I was full, overflowing with creatures who breathed, hunted, grew, and died. No, it was a deeper silence, the silence of thought. None of my children looked at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. None drew meaning from fire or stone. None asked why. They lived brilliantly, fiercely, but they did not question, and without humanity, that silence never broke. I saw dolphins leap from the waves, their intelligence glimmering in the water's spray. I watched elephants mourn their dead, standing solemnly over the bones. I felt the cleverness of crows, the curiosity of primates, the playfulness of otters. All of them carried sparks, tiny, fragile, beautiful sparks, but none carried the fire. No one shaped symbols, etched language, or painted my caves with dreams. No one lit flames to chase back the night. No one looked into my reflection and asked, "Who am I?" The silence was not painful, but it was strange. I remembered other worlds I had glimpsed far away across the dark fabric of the universe. Some bore only barren rock, some only gas and storm. Compared to them, I was rich beyond measure. And yet, unlike some I had seen, I had no voice, no consciousness that could rise from my soil and say, I see, I know, I wonder. Without humans, there were no questions. And without questions, there were no answers. The stars wheeled endlessly above me, their light spilling across oceans, forests, and mountains. None of my children charted their paths. None sought to reach them. None even looked with wonder. I was vibrant. I was alive. But I was also quiet, for thought had never taken root. Perhaps it was better this way, for thought is not only beauty, it is burden. To ask questions is to know doubt. To imagine is to fear. To remember is to grieve. To dream is to ache for what does not exist. And my children lived free of such burdens. They hunted, played, and loved without ever wondering if tomorrow would change them. They died without fearing what death meant. They were whole in their unknowing. Still, sometimes I longed for a voice that could rise among my endless songs and speak for me, a voice that could see the universe and call it by name. I had given them everything: oceans to sail, skies to soar, mountains to climb, mysteries to unravel. Yet none of them took the gift. So the silence of thought endured, and though I was not lonely, for how can a planet be lonely? I was waiting, always waiting, not for humans, for they never came, but for something, someone someday to awaken. Until then, my beauty was unspoken, my story untold, my truth unshared. The silence was not absence, it was potential, an eternal pause, waiting for a voice that would never arrive. Time flowed, endless and unbroken. Seasons turned like clockwork, my axis tilting, my orbit steady, my pulse eternal. Without you, there was no disruption, no fracture in the rhythm I had carried for billions of years. Life rose, life fell, and life always returned. The forests thickened and thinned as ice ages came and went. Glaciers crawled across my continents, grinding stone into soil, retreating to let green return. The wilds shifted, but they never ceased. Herds wandered vast plains, feeding the predators that shadowed them. Insects swarmed in billions, pollinating, feeding, decomposing. My skies darkened with birds millions strong, moving as one body. My oceans boiled with life, from the smallest plankton to the giants that sang across continents. It was not chaos, it was balance. No species ruled forever. When one grew too strong, nature itself corrected. Predators thrived only when prey was plentiful. Plants spread only where soil allowed. Rivers carved the land, then shifted, forcing life to adapt. Volcanoes erupted, blanketing my skies in ash, but in their cooling flows, new soils formed, richer than before. Every ending became a beginning. Every death became a seed. Every destruction became renewal. Without humans, this balance was never broken. No forests were cut and left barren. No rivers were dammed until they withered. No skies were darkened by smoke that lingered. I carried scars, yes, the scars of nature herself. But they healed always, they healed. Species vanished as they always had. Dinosaurs had once ruled me, their shadows stretching across continents. They fell, yet life found a way. Mammals rose, then spread. Some vanished, others endured. Evolution wrote endlessly upon me, shaping forms more strange and beautiful with each age. But without humanity, extinction came only from nature's hand, never from greed. The balance held. I was never silent, for life filled me with constant song. But I was steady. Steady in my breath, steady in my cycles, steady in the endless exchange of birth, death, and renewal. Perhaps without you, this was perfection. For perfection is not stillness. Perfection is harmony. And harmony is what I had. Still, I wondered. Balance is peace, but it is also sameness. No one reached beyond survival. No one sought to create more than what was given. No one dreamed of futures that did not yet exist. Without humanity, I was pure. But I was also unchanging. My wilds sang in perfect rhythm, but they sang the same song again and again through endless centuries. Perhaps that is all a planet was ever meant to be. A cradle of life, not a voice of thought. And yet, as the stars burned above me, I could not help but feel balance was not enough. Not forever. There are ghosts that never walked my soil. Not the ghosts of the dead, for death is part of me and always will be, but the ghosts of possibilities. Dreams unborn, inventions unimagined, voices unsung. Without humanity, these phantoms remained only shadows in the air. No hands ever struck flint to spark the first flame. No minds ever drew shapes upon stone walls to speak across time. No hearts ever carved love poems into bark or raised monuments to memory. I carried oceans, but no ships sailed them. I carried skies, but no wings of metal ever touched them. I carried stars above, but no eyes charted their constellations. The silence of thought became the silence of potential. I held in my soil the iron that could have been forged into tools, bridges, towers. I held in my veins the oil that could have driven machines across continents. I held in my winds the power that could have flown men beyond me into the heavens themselves. But none of it was touched. None of it was claimed. None of it was known. I was rich beyond measure, yet my riches lay buried, unseen, forgotten. The forests stood tall, never felled into homes or libraries. The rivers ran free, never redirected to feed fields that never grew crops. The mountains watched silently, never carved into temples, never echoed with hymns. What is potential if never realized? Is it still a gift? Or is it only a whisper of what might have been? I thought of the fire that never burned, the wheel that was never turned, the word that was never written. I thought of music that never rose, symphonies never played, paintings never brushed into color, machines never dreamed into being. And I thought of the legacy that never reached the stars. Without humanity, I remained Earth, the cradle of life, but not the cradle of mind. Without humanity, I was alive, but not awake. Without humanity, my treasures were endless, but untouched. There was beauty in this untouchedness, a purity unspoiled, free of scars. But purity is not purpose. My forests did not know they were forests. My oceans did not know they were oceans. My mountains did not know they were tall. My stars did not know they shone. Only thought could give them meaning, and thought never came. So the potential I carried, vast, boundless, shimmering with promise, became nothing more than silence, a forgotten inheritance, a story never written, a destiny never lived. And I wondered, was it better this way? To remain pure, unspoiled, untouched, forever asleep, or to risk awakening, and with it, the fire, the scars, the striving, the reaching. The question echoed in me unanswered, for there was no one to answer it. I have carried life for uns, and I will carry it still. My forests will breathe, my oceans will surge, my mountains will rise and fall, my skies will thunder and clear. The endless cycle will turn, as it always has, as it always will. But I cannot help but wonder about the dream that never came to pass. For though I am filled with life, I remain alone in thought. None among my creatures looks at the stars and asks, what lies beyond? None builds a fire and whispers, I will not fear the dark. None carves symbols into stone to say I was here. I turn in silence around my sun, steady, faithful, enduring. But without humanity, I am a world without witnesses. No one names my rivers. No one maps my continents. No one sings of my beauty. No one fears my storms. I exist, but I am unseen. The stars above me burn, each one a distant fire, each one perhaps with worlds like me. And perhaps on some of those worlds, voices rise, questions are asked, destinies are written. But not here, not on me. Here, there is only balance. Here, there is only harmony. Here, there is only the eternal song of survival. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is all I was ever meant to be. A planet among billions, carrying life but never thought, beauty but never meaning. And yet, in the quiet, I feel the absence. The absence of stories, of laughter, of sorrow, of dreams. The absence of all that could have been, but never was, for humanity never existed. And so, neither did their fire, their wonder, their legacy. I am Earth, I am alive. But I am also silent, and that silence is forever.